Good evening, everyone. Apologies for the delay. Name is Rich. Pronouncing him and Cuban American. This is a new special guest for today. Dean, how you doing? Please introduce yourself.
Very good, very good. Happy to be here. Sorry if you hear the frogs in the bathroom or the background or the
Mhm.
logrillo, the crickets. I promise you, I'd rather much hear cookies, but we got grillos instead.
Right. I'm a member of Cuban Americans for Cuba now, actually, since 2024. And the man who started is none other than Denny Valdez, actually. So I'm kind of here to talk about a little bit more about Cuba actually and why the embargo is not working at all and how we can mobilize more Cuban Americans, whether it be they're in Miami, New Jersey, or wherever the diaspora is, that are not, crazy. Yeah. And any other questions you got for me so far?
What was that?
I was asking you if you have any questions you got for me so far regarding anything Cuba related.
Where do I even begin? I want to visit. I want to visit. Walk me through this. Can I? Can I not? Please give me the most transparent 411 one can possibly do. I want to visit. I want to get my hands in Cuba, and I want to see Cuba for myself.
Right. Makes sense. So, yes, you can technically travel, but it's a little complicated. So you'll need obviously your passport, but you also need a travel visa actually and travel insurance and whenever you go to a certain website, you have to click on support for the Cuban people so that you can visit Cuba. And you must stay in one of those casa particulares or any sort of private hotel that's non state owned, if you will. And you have to also bring lots of cash because unfortunately Cuba doesn't have any sort of credit due to the embargo. Not allowing financial companies to invest in Cuba, if you will, due to the economic sanctions in Cuba because of the fact that the Cuban Revolution happened, and and they had a socialist government that happened over, and they had an embargo ever since, officially starting in 1962. And places you can travel to are obviously Havana, Santiago, and Holguín, and a couple of other places you can visit. But it's very tough out there, unfortunately, due to the oil blockade. But yes, you can visit Cuba, but you have to like I mentioned before, go for the support for the Cuban people in order to legally travel to Cuba.
If I were to get invited, would that be an easier process or not even?
I feel like it depends on a company. I can imagine if you were invited to let's say Copic, for example, I can imagine it'd be somewhat more of a cheaper process if you're going with other people. But what you can do is you could also book just individual tours, that have somewhat of a cheap Airbnb prices actually on one of those casa particulares, whether that be Havana, Santiago, and etc.
Understood. Understood. Is there, because I remember, I don't know if it's still there now, but I wanted to know. I heard that there is or was a town called Puerto Rico Libre in Cuba. Are you familiar with that?
I have heard about that actually, but I don't know if it's still around or not. I have to look into that a bit more, but I'm pretty sure that it's still around. I just haven't heard anyone visited that part of Cuba yet, but I can imagine it's still around in Cuba. But so why am I against the embargo on Cuba? So for the past several years, actually, I met a man on Twitter who was named Shinji, actually, who was also born in Cuba, and he's very critical of the government in Cuba, but he doesn't support any sanctions or embargo on Cuba whatsoever because he feels that it's the Cuban government's strongest target point as like a scapegoat, if you will, just so they
Right.
don't do like what Suji would like to see in Cuba, which is like legalize more political parties or allowing the economy like to like thrive without intervention and also like allow a greater freedom to travel there without having to like go through like restrictions whatsoever, and to also trust the Cuban people's self-determination to forge the path they want to do in Cuba at the same time. You muted, Dean.
Can you repeat that last part?
As I was saying, so Shinji wants to see a Cuba that has a bit more politically open, you know, maybe just like one more party legalized, as well as greater freedom to like travel, and a Cuba free with from sanctions as well, and to let Cubans decide their own path they want to take in Cuba, as well as being critical of the government at the same time. And
Why do Cuban Americans, not all, but why, from the lot of I countered, feel that there, or say that there is no embargo, that there's no sanctions? Why is that?
That's a very good question. That's $1 million question you just asked. Unfortunately, many things, it's not really like a one-word answer, but partially due to the Cuban American lobby spewing no embargo propaganda, as well as lots of people think that despite like no evidence that it was the Cuban government that stole food and stole all the generators from themselves, and in reality, while it's true that there's no like quote unquote like ban on food and medicine, it's a little bit more complex and more nuanced than that. Last I checked, if a certain supply is like worth more than like 10% of what's made from like the US, it cannot enter Cuba, if you will, per se. But like I said, this policy makes no sense whatsoever. And another one of the reasons is because of, I think, is partially due to Cuban government trauma. I think because of the fact that even though they're like struggling and day to day, there's like a lot of like political nuances whatsoever. On one camp, you have like just like anti-Cuban government since after the revolution succeeded, but it's still like hated Fulgencio Batista, if you will. Then you have the other camp that's like pro Fidel but not pro current government, which is Diaz-Canel. And then you have the other camp, which is like just like supportive of the Cuban government since the revolution succeeded. So I don't really have much data on like which camp I would say the Cuban people were leaning more into, but what I can tell you is that I feel like when it comes to why Cubans don't think the embargo exists, it's a combination of Cuban American lobby propaganda, as well as legitimate political trauma from the Cuban government, as well as just like feeling kind of like desperate to like have the Cuban people be more taken care of, in Cuba. But yeah, there's all like lots of like intricacies and there are ones that has yet to be like resolved regarding Cuba, but hopefully maybe once the embargo is lifted, maybe somewhat more Cubans really in the US would realize, okay, maybe maybe they were right that the embargo doesn't work, but I think only time will tell, to be honest. Any other thing you want to ask me of real quickly?
Where are you based out of?
So I live in New Brunswick, New Jersey, but I was originally born in Miami, Florida, actually, but I actually grew up most of my life in Long Island due to the fact that my mother actually was studying Hofstra actually to become a lawyer, actually, and she's been first she became a lawyer for legal aid in Long Island, then for most of her career, starting in 2015, she became an immigration lawyer, and never went back since, if you will. But Yeah, as you can see, we're like all over the place. You'll find them in Jersey, New York, California, Florida, uh, Tampa, you name it. All right. Now we'll get into my first experience in Cuba. So I went last October for my birthday. Actually, I'm currently 29, and so I see like a lot of like Cubans and a couple of homelessness there that are also struggling to make ends meet, but for some reason at the same time that like the Cuban people remain hopeful to what's to come during the next day, despite that. Regardless of political orientation, I would say a good majority of Cubans in Cuba don't want the sanctions or embargo to continue going forward. And I got to visit the capital, actually. That's one. I got to visit a couple of Cuban restaurants, actually. I can't remember what it's called, but one of them was like a sort of Cuban Italian restaurant. So I actually had a Cuban pizza over there for the first time, and it's definitely like not quite as good as the one in New York, obviously, but it's definitely different. You know, I like to call it pizza with Cuban characteristics, if you will. And I've also went to a Cuban restaurant called Don Lorenzo, which I was able to have the ropa vieja over there. And even though it's not quite as good as you might, get from like let's say the United States, for example, I thought for what it was pretty delicious, you know. And I also got to visit Fosterlandia, which is a sort of art exhibit museum in Havana, and I got to see a lot of like so much art decorations as well as seeing like a lot of like Latin America countries actually when I was walking down the artistic murals actually in Fosterlandia, which was pretty fascinating to see. And I also got to take a good walk in central Havana. Actually, I even took a picture of Malecon actually in Cuba, which is a very nice view actually. And unfortunately, I was unable to see family over there due to the fact that I had a cousin that canceled on me because she had to visit her granddad from a faraway town who's sick and needs taking care of. But hopefully, the next time I'll go, I'll definitely see them. And maybe even like learn more from like their experience. Compared to like what my grandparents have, and even like my dad who was born in Cuba but has like no memories whatsoever because he left when he was a 1 year old baby. But yeah, you know, I'm still continuing to learn more Cuban history, whether that be from Vinny Valdez or other Cuban Americans that have went there more frequently in Cuban Americans for Cuba, just so that way I'll have like a bit more, I guess, sort of clarity, if you will, on like what we feel that the Cuban people would need to do in order to, you know, forge a path they would like to see, just so that we don't see them, struggling to make ends meet any longer. And when you do travel to Cuba, what do you hope to see in there? Besides, I think you mentioned Viva Puerto Rico Libre town, I think it's called.
I want to see it all. I feel like the news media propaganda is doing such a good job of just making it look so torn up and down. And I just feel like I never believed it. I never believe American news media or any
Mhm.
sort of anything that comes out of excuse me, the United States. I do believe that there are two truths to every there are
Mhm.
two truths in everything, whether you agree with it or not, in a sense
Mhm.
where two things can be right. I want to see the real thing. I want to go. I just want to I want to understand as much as I can from the Cuban perspective. I get a lot of perspectives from every. I have a great understanding and abundance of respect for Haitians and the Haitian community. I've learned so much about Haiti, and I'm just like, okay, I've seen enough to form my own opinion. I feel like I still don't have an opinion for Cuba. I want the country to thrive, but what does the people want? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I don't actually exactly what you mean. Um, I can't say I know like everything and what the Cubans want, but the ones that I actually like, talk to, and yes, I do have friends in Cuba as well. Even though they're critical of the government, they don't want Trump taking over Cuba whatsoever. Like they still believe that Cuba should remain independent. You know, like no matter what, even if they despise the current government whatsoever, they feel that it should be up to the Cuban people to decide their future on what they want to do. You know, but what I can do as a Cuban American, yes, like many Cuban Americans, whether that be in the Oregon I'm a part of or everywhere else, I also grew up in an anti-communist family, but I grew up in like a sort of politically split family. Actually, my dad would be leaning more towards conservative, but my mother's side being leaning towards more liberal, if you will, and what both sides of my family have in common is that they're like strong anti-Cuban government presence whatsoever. But only, unfortunately, very few of them are somewhat at least willing to take any of the embargo seriously at the moment. To the fact that, like I mentioned, I have lots of family members that are traumatized by their lived experiences in Cuba whatsoever. But I'll tell you like a very brief story. So my great grandfather Carlos Irigoyen actually was a stage actor actually, and my great grandmother on my mom's side was a piano player actually, and they were not like wealthy per se, but they were definitely more well off than others. But when the coup happened in the 50s, the second Batista dictatorship, actually, my great grandparents actually started to be more against it, actually, and felt that they're killing too many people. And at least my great grandfather was actually a supporter of Fidel at the time during the years of the Cuban Revolution. Then finally it succeeded, and he was happy to see it. But then later on, as time went on, he became a lot more disillusioned with the Cuban government. And my grandmother, who was also born in Cuba, already left through a federal pardon, actually. He his theater some sort of shut down for some reason. I don't really know the full details, but his theater he used to work for shut down, and he had to end up working at some sort of labor camp now for several years. And as he became more disillusioned, his pro-government family wouldn't, unfortunately, listen to him. But when he like contacted my grandmother already, after the fact that she was living in New York at the time, he started like speaking out against the government actually, and one of his family members unfortunately told on him, and unfortunately for several years he was imprisoned. And luckily, my grandmother actually had to call a few of her elected Congress people to figure out a way to get her father safely out of Cuba. But luckily, some sort of deal reached, and he was one of those, I guess you could say, political prisoners that actually got free from Cuba. But he never saw anyone in his family in Cuba ever again since then. So quite a lot of unfortunate circumstances in my family, unfortunately, and this is just like one example. But I never knew him. He died when I was like very young due to lung cancer. But hopefully, the next time I go to Cuba, maybe I can finally bring some of my family to come. I have like a few that are at least willing to visit there for the first time. And I have one of my cousins that actually travels frequently just to see his girlfriend that lives in Havana. Um, and yeah, like I said, I can't wait to learn more about Cuba. Besides hearing from my family's perspective and um, see more of the Cuban people's actual lived experiences are like. All right, and now I have a question for you. So, do you know any Cuba Ricans in Puerto Rico? And if so, do they acknowledge the failure of a policy known as the embargo on Cuba?
I only know one Cuba Rican, but they live in Miami.
Uh huh.
They don't. I don't know. I feel like my thing is here. The Cuban population diaspora here, they've made it very, very, very clear to a point where they built their own gated community and their own way of life. And essentially, not all, but a great percentage have not associated with a lot of the local Puerto Rican populations, unfortunately. And the only one who I could say that was born and raised here that lives here is our governor of Puerto Rico. She's born and raised of Cuban ancestry.
Yeah,
and
I've heard her.
You heard of her?
Yeah, I've heard lots of bad things actually.
So, and needless to say, I'm just not a fan. But, you know, she was born here and she was raised here her whole life. But she had a different mindset, different mentality.
I can imagine. Yeah. Oh man. It's always the crazy ones actually, worrying things, Yeah. I'm so sorry you have to go through that.
Have you visited here?
Puerto Rico? No, not yet. But funny enough, my grandparents on my mother's side actually met in Puerto Rico. My grandfather was actually from Aruba, but he actually went to school in Puerto Rico. I believe he was like studying some sort of music major. But yeah, that's where my grandparents met actually, and they actually left there to get a new life in New York, and they actually had my mother actually, where she was born in New York City, and I do have cousins actually that are Cuba Rican actually, but pretty much all of them live in Florida. But some of them visited Puerto Rico, others not yet. But I would like to see for myself one day. Also,
the capital of Latin America. That's really what it is. Any other questions you have for me?
Actually, yes. So, I actually just had it. Oh, yes. So, I know that that it's not really like large over there, but what do you think for Cubans or even Cuban Ricans that live in Puerto Rico should do in order to help advance your island against your current governor in Puerto Rico?
Oh boy. My experience, my opinion, I'd say that they are 100,000% in favor of our governor now. And I would also say that the majority are very pro annexation USA. Needless to say, no, I'm sorry, not needless to say, but I will say that they're still very pro to their patria of Cuba. And I feel like they live here with the hopes of communism being eradicated so that they can go back. I feel like they all have a plan to go back. And once they're out, like they're out. Some might stay. Some Cuban Ricans I feel like might stay, consider the lifestyle that they've had being brought up here. There's an artist named El Guaina. He's a great example of changing the narrative. He lives in Miami now. He got married to a celebrity. So he's like back and forth between Puerto Rico and Miami a lot. But he is much in favor of the people. Have you heard of him?
I'm sorry, what's his name again?
I'll send it in the message in the group chat right now.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'll send it to you in an email if I can't send it here. Yeah, I can't send it here.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I'd definitely like to learn more about him. I know Bad Bunny is huge into independence, judging by a lot of his like activism surrounding Puerto Rico is concerned. And I guess I did watch the Super Bowl actually and his halftime show, and I love pretty much every minute of it. And um, hopefully, with like his whole like rhetoric of the Americas could finally be like expanded to what I like to call internationalist organizing, for a better future for not just in Cuba, not just in Puerto Rico, but throughout all of the Americas and all that good stuff. That reminds me. I don't think Bad Bunny's been to Cuba yet. I wonder what's holding him back, especially since he has a lot of money to go.
I don't think he would fall well with the people of Cuba in Cuba per se. I don't know. I would like for him to go out there one day, but that would be way too complex for him to perform or even do any sort of like project with the people out there. I think that would be very, very difficult. But I could be wrong. He was supposed to. No, he did. He went to DR. He did a DR a lot. He's visited DR a lot. I was gonna say maybe Venezuela, but even then, how things are with Venezuela shifting in politics right now, I don't think he's gonna go out there. And I've been dying to go to Venezuela. Venezuela, another one. I would never, for the life of me, say I know what's going on because I could watch as many videos as I can, and I still refuse to accept that they're like a dying country in the eyes of the American. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
I refuse to believe that. They are such a big freaking country. There's no way. Absolutely no way. Makes no sense. But what I do know from what I've heard is that it's easier for me to go to Venezuela than it is to Cuba. There's so much history that all three of us, I say Cuba, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, there's so much history that all three of us have. It would be a disservice to me to not visit either country at least once in my lifetime.
That reminds me. I actually still never visited Venezuela yet, but my stepmother actually is actually originally from that country, but she lived during the Chavez administration and didn't like the government over there. But I would still, even though, despite the fact that Maduro's been kidnapped and how the new government, isn't like, that much better either. I would still like to visit there anyway, just to see what life is like over there, and plus she actually does still have family in Venezuela. So I'd be curious to like a little more about that as well, but like I mentioned, I'm sort of like less familiar with Venezuela than I am with Cuba, but I know Venezuela is very like important for the history of the Americas. Now, what kind of books would I recommend you, at least as a starting point? I would recommend go read Cuba and American History by Ada Ferrer. And yes, the author is actually Cuban, and she actually covers a lot of important history, actually, like the Taínos, like the Platt Amendment, and briefly the Jones Act as well, I believe. And also like during the Batista dictatorship and then after the revolution. Yeah, there's like a lot of like good content over there I would recommend. I haven't quite finished it yet, but I should be in about a month or so. I'm currently doing a Cuba reading group actually with other fellow Cuban Americans actually, to have like a bit more political education on Cuba, just so we have a much more understanding of our island and our history, if you will.
Email that to me, please.
Sure, I can do that. After that, I'm gonna start reading the Economic War Against Cuba, just so I'll learn more on why the U.S. has been like doing this for like decades now, actually, and even before the revolution. Funny enough, Cuba, it was a colony actually, just like your island, Puerto Rico, actually, through the Platt Amendment, and there's like a very small group of Cubans, unfortunately, that are also pro annexation, but they're like a insignificant minority. We don't have to like, pay
Listen,
attention to all of it.
people ask me all the time things about Cuba. I'm just like, I would never, I can't talk on certain things with Cuba. You're honestly probably one of the nicest people I've ever spoken to that it's from Cuba, and that's saying a lot because I lived in Miami. I lived in Opalaca for a while.
Oh
So
wow.
if you know that area, you know that it was rough. But I'm in favor of whatever makes Cuba a prosperous nation. I won't say people, but I'll say whatever works. That way everybody can have a slice of bread at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
That being said,
Yeah.
I do gotta head out now. I have actually another call I have to jump on, but if you want, I can squeeze in another question if you had it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So really quickly, before you go, how when's the next time you plan on visiting Florida? Be honest.
Florida this year. I might go within the next few months. Actually, between us, I actually got to get surgery soon, so I'm gonna be out of commission of traveling for a while. So once I get that done and that's out the way, my first stop is gonna be Florida. Maybe within the next 2 to 3 months, I should be there.
Okay, sounds good to me.
If
Um,
not there, I'll be in New York.
okay, I should try to visit Florida pretty soon, also just to see family. But well, nice meeting you, Dean. I'd like to talk to you again next time, and have a good day. All right,
Send me the email me. We'll stay in contact. Okay. Much love, man.
will do. All right, adios.
Bye.